Good morning. It's October 17th, and we're starting our planning board meeting. But before we start the formal part, I'd just like to make one announcement. So tonight at our headquarters, we're hosting the last of our three-part speaker series on missing middle or attainable, we also call it attainable housing. Tonight's topic is entitled Practitioners Panel, Implementation, Successes, and Areas of Focus. We'll hear from developers and industry experts that have leveraged relaxed zoning and other creative tools to develop attainable housing. We'll discover what worked, where there were challenges, and what Montgomery County can do to actualize attainable housing. The three panelists are Jack Wilburn of the Young Group, Rosie Hepner of the ULI Terwilliger Center for Housing, and Tony Perez of Opticos Design. And our own board member, James Hidrick, will be moderating the panel this evening. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm Artie's understudy.
Not at all. So let's get started with the formal part of our meeting this afternoon. The first part is adoption of resolutions. We have two. The first is Chick-fil-A Forest Conservation Plan Amendment F 2024-003A MCPB number 24093, and the second is Chick-fil-A Clarksburg Site Plan Amendment 8/2014-016C MCPB number 24-094. Do I have a motion for approval of these two resolutions?
Move to approve the two resolutions.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. Next is item 1B, approval of minutes. We have two this afternoon, minutes of October 1st, 2024, and October 3rd, 2024. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve both minutes.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 3-0. The next is item 3, regulatory extension request. We have two this afternoon, Darnestown Meadows Administrative Subdivision 6/2024-0110, Regulatory Review Extension Request Number 2, and Ancient Oak Administrative Subdivision Plan Number 6/2024-0220, and Preliminary Final Forest Conservation Plan Number F 2024-10000, a Regulatory Extension Request Number 1. Where staff is recommending approval of each extension. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve the both extension requests.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. And next, we'll go to item number 4, the roundtable discussion.
Mr. Chair, based upon vigorous waving from the audience, we inadvertently skipped over the record plats.
There you go.
If you would,
Yeah, moving too fast here.
you're efficient.
Yeah. We have two record plats this afternoon. Subdivision plat number 220230050 and 220230110 Woodstock, where staff is recommending approval. And the second is subdivision plat number 220241190 Meadows Suite, where staff is recommending approval. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve the record plats.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. Now we'll move on to item number 4, roundtable discussion, where we have our Parks Director, Mitty Figueredo, leading us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you. Before I hand this off to our data analysis team to present on the GIS strategic plan, I did want to make one personnel announcement. Christy Kabadi, who I think all of you know because she's presented to the board before, has been promoted to Division Chief of Park Planning and Stewardship. Christy had been in an acting role as Division Chief for Park Planning and Stewardship since the beginning of the year when I became the Parks Director and Darren Flouché stepped in to be the acting Deputy Director for Administration. So we're very pleased to have Christy in this role permanently. She would be here today to hear this announcement, but she's actually out of town. She's out of the office today. Christy's been working for the Parks Department for several years. I think she joined us during the pandemic in one of those pandemic years. And she first came to work for us in park development. She's a trained landscape architect. She later moved over to our park planning and stewardship team as section leader for our site planning section. And then did an excellent job in the acting role, and we are very pleased to have her on board permanently and officially in this capacity. So thank you.
Great. That's great to hear, and congratulations, Christy, on the promotion. We really, really appreciate homegrown, too, so we love that. Thank you.
And now I will hand it off to our team who will be presenting.
Good morning. My name's Hassan Sims, and I'm the Data Analytics Manager. And on my right-hand side, we have Keegan Clifford, who's the GIS Coordinator. Today, we wanted to go over an overview of the GIS unit within the Data Analytics section that is in Management Services Division and also in the Parks Department. Our agenda for today is what is GIS, the GIS team's accomplishments, the GIS projects, and the GIS strategic plan. As I went over a little bit, we are housed in the data analytics team. The data analytics team is housed in the management services division. Our division chief is Suchi Vera. I'm the data analytics manager, and we have a small but mighty unit for GIS, which is Keegan Clifford and Tiffany Wu, who's in the audience. Tiffany, you want to stand up and say hello? All right. Now, what is GIS? GIS is a computerized based tool that stores, analyzes, and visualizes and interprets geographic data. What does that mean for our department? So we utilize it for cartography. Cartography is the science of map making. And a lot of the maps that you see out at our amazing park system are built within house with GIS technology. As you can see here, that's a Black Hill Regional Park map. We also use it for analysis. And the analysis that goes behind it creates a lot more efficient routing. For example, we have a park bridge inspection program that we were able to run it through the analysis through GIS, and we were able to increase the amount of bridges that we inspect, which is over 500 park bridges, and we were able to bring it down to 1 year, from 3 years to a 2-year cycle. And we also capture a lot of the great amenities that we have in the parks, because it's very important to make sure that we have accurate account of the things that we provide to our park patrons. This is a tool that was created in-house for PPSD, and they're able to utilize this tool to capture a lot of the athletic fields and ball fields in the system in real time, so we can update the system as quickly as possible. The GIS team also has been featured in an Esri Park and Recreation brochure. The Esri stands for Environmental Science Research Institute. They are the leading GIS company in the world, and they featured us in this brochure that highlights planning and design, smart operations, education, outreach, and equity, which are all things near and dear to the Parks Department's heart. Now, what did they feature us on? They featured us on an asset request tool. This is a tool that we created in-house. It's essentially a crowdsourcing application that's on your mobile device that any staff member can go out in the field and see if there is an amenity that is there or is not there and can be updated in real time. And that ensures that our inventory is up to date for all of our park patrons and the analysis that we do here at the department. Another thing that we have been working on is web accessibility. Web accessibility has been around for a very long time, but it did not affect a lot of the local and the state and local government entities, which it is now, and we're happy that it is, because we have been able to present a lot of our GIS applications through the website, and we've been working tirelessly with third-party vendors to help us make sure that it's accessible for everyone to utilize. We have been told that we are actually at the forefront of this, and we've been able to express certain issues with Esri, Waze, and Google to ensure that all of these applications are accessible for everyone. We also get to go to the GIS conference, Esri GIS conference, once a year. This is something that you have to submit an abstract and get accepted first and foremost. It is the largest GIS conference in the world. It has 21,000 people in beautiful San Diego. And previous years, we usually get about 4 different presentations that we present to the whole world about our great accomplishments within the Parks Department. One of those is modernization of Montgomery Park's community gardens, creating a GIS strategic action plan, modernizing and crowdsourcing park assets, and mapping park encroachments. And because we have been able to secure an enterprise license agreement, which has increased our license base, and because of the outreach that the GIS unit has been doing, from November 2023, we had about 24 accounts. Mind you, those 24 accounts were actually shared to a certain degree, but it has grown all the way to 168 accounts. So that's a 500% increase, and it's continually to grow because people are seeing the power of GIS within the Parks Department. Some of the outreach that we do, we have various different meetings for different types of groups. Quarterly, we have user group meetings so people can share different ideas and issues that they may have with GIS. We have a data steward and subject matter expert meeting that helps people that are more associated to the amenities and the analysis, that they're able to share ideas and figure out solutions to their problems. And GIS Champions meeting, that's for the higher technical users within our department. We also hold a GIS Day event. It's a national event for the whole world. I believe it's November 19th that we are hosting it in this room. And that is a ability to let other people see the power of GIS and see if they could utilize it within their work program. And we also have a Geography Awareness Week that same week, I believe from November 20th to the 22nd, and we already have 13 different classes that we're gonna have to showcase all the great work that we're doing in the Parks Department. Now I am gonna hand it over to Keegan Clifford.
Thank you, Hassan. So I'll share just a couple of high-level projects that we use GIS for. So at Montgomery Parks, we use GIS for community gardens, volunteer cleanup, park bridges, and athletic fields. Community gardens is perhaps my favorite program at Parks. We have all 14 gardens and all 556 garden plots mapped in GIS. The program uses a public-facing map that shares the locations of cisterns, mulch, compost, and other garden features. The community garden team is responsible for performing seasonal inspections on all 556 garden plots. GIS has cut their inspection time in half. Emails and pictures are now automatically sent through the field, so it negates the step of driving back to the office, uploading pictures off of your phone, and then drafting an email. The volunteer cleanup program brings together park staff and the public. It fosters social connectivity and physical activity. The program takes a slightly different approach for GIS. It employs a GIS dashboard. That dashboard does really quick analysis on the fly. So it calculates the total number of trash collected in pounds and the total dollar amount that the volunteer services contributes, which is over $300,000. We know if a cleanup event occurred in an equity focus area, or watershed management area, and other geographies. GIS has really helped this program to bring visibility to each location and has helped the program to become more organized. The athletic field program also takes a very data-centric approach. We now have an accurate inventory of all our permittable fields. We also use this information to assess demand and supply. We have the ability to look at the profile of parks in our recreational and regional parks. We know if it's lit, if it's fenced, if irrigation is present. We're also working on an accessible web map that will allow the public to find permittable fields based on certain criteria like sports. And it's allowed us to have a better visualization of our overlay. So the image at the bottom of the screen is a good illustration of a multi-sport field. GIS allows us to know how many sports could be played at that field on any given time. I want to switch and talk about our GIS Strategic Action Plan. So the mission of the plan is to provide a high-quality information system network that empowers users of various levels to harness the power of reliable and accurate data. In January of last year, the GIS team began working on the second Montgomery Parks GIS Strategic Action Plan. The plan outlines the growth of GIS for parks and also how we want to engage the public for the next 4 years. The plan was built by engaging multiple divisions on the administrative and the operational side of the department. The plan targets field mobility, decision-making, analytics, data management, visualization, and other components. Before I get into the overview of the plan, just a quick background. We met with stakeholders on multiple occasions as we wanted to capture the true sentiment of the department when it comes to GIS. We started in January and didn't end until October. It was broken into 3 phases. We had a total of 42 meetings. We obtained 87 surveys. That number is actually a lot higher as some surveys were submitted individually, others were submitted on behalf of a group or section. From those 87 surveys, we obtained 116 projects. Those 116 projects were broken into 4 goals. Those 116 projects were then assessed by the risks, effort, and the impact to the department. This is a 4-year plan starting in FY25 and ending in FY28. Here are the goals of our strategic plan: data, mapping, analytics, and education and outreach. Data is really to have an extensive network of information for parks use. Mapping depends on data. You cannot have mapping without data. So it's to provide high-quality interactive maps, whether it's desktop or on your mobile device. Analytics is to provide quality analytical information. This could be done via automation, maps, apps, and dashboards. And then education and outreach is to facilitate information with park staff and the public. So I just want to highlight 4 of our 116 projects: parking lots, parks and trails, and biological monitoring. For parking lots, we want to improve the current accuracy of our layer. This will help when we plan large-scale events like Juneteenth, Scotland Yard Juneteenth Heritage Festival, Sligo Fest, Green Fest, and others. This will also help us to have a better visualization for our handicap parking. We'll know exactly where they are and how many, and this will also help with maintenance, as we'll know the square footage and the surface types for each parking lot. Improving our Parks and Trails Atlas is another goal for the plan. The first and most important thing when sharing information with the public is web accessibility. We want to comply with the DOJ's ruling for web content and also make a one-stop shop for park amenities like dog parks, courts, skate parks, and others. We also want to have an accurate inventory for our amenities, so GIS will help us just have this great public-facing tool. Next is trails. We want to improve the visibility of our layer by using location-based technology like GPS. We want to improve the connectivity between our trails. This will increase pedestrian and bike activity. And we also want to look at our trails to find out which ones are most accessible for people with physical ailments. And biological monitoring, this is a very robust scientific program that has been collecting data since the 1990s. This is way before GIS was established at parks. Some of the elements of this program include benthic macrovertebrate collection, amphibian and reptile search, electrofishing, which is the image to the right where you put on those Ghostbuster backpacks and collect fish, ephemeral wetlands, and physical chemistry, and there are many more. We want to use GIS to centralize and consolidate this information. Also, we want to make this information available to organizations like DEP. Having that information will inform stream health. Having this information in GIS will also save staff time with analysis and data collection, and ultimately, this will inform public health, so we'll make better informed decisions about the environment. That's all.
All right, thank you. So in conclusion, the GIS team has been providing great support in GIS services to the department, and we are trying to be pioneers in GIS in any way that we can. We want to continue to represent the Parks Department in the GIS realm on an international stage and ensure that we utilize GIS to make better decisions, informed decisions for our Parks Department. And also, we continue to increase the user base within the department so we can make things a lot more efficient here. And with that, we thank you.
That was a great presentation, Mr. Sims and Mr. Clifford, and it's so wonderful. You know, you don't know till you know, right? And we're so happy that you tell us all the great work you do. Yep, data is empowering, and you guys have miles and miles and thousands of acres of parkland, I love how you're using data as an operational excellence tool to improve your operations and to monitor what you have. I couldn't imagine where you have everything, but with this tool, you're right on top of it. So thank you for all your hard work. And I have one question. So if I'm out on a trail and see something, is there any way do our phones tell us where we are in a certain place that I could, if I said I'm at, is it some coordinates, and if I texted, will that help you or go through your GIS system and say, this is happening here, or this thing is great, this playground great, does that interact with could it interact with your GIS to make it easy for you to figure out where things are if someone gave comments or something?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So in theory, yes. Right now, the thing that we're working on is web accessibility. So if we put something out there, we need to ensure that it is accessible for everyone, and that's the big project we're working on right now. But yes, GIS can do it. We just haven't done it right now.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments from the board members?
No, I just wanted to say, like, I always find the mapping and GIS ability we have, like, really very, very impressive. I have a very little bit of experience with GIS. It's like several years ago, back when I was in graduate school, and it has come a very long way, apparently, from what I do. And this is fascinating, and the maps are being put together, and the way that helps us sort of visualize and use the information we have is fantastic. So I want to thank you all for that. And the only other real, like, practical question I have is on the parking lots. Is there a way to, the parking lot study in particular, is there a way to determine usage from that, or is this more of just the mapping of the locations and amounts and things like that?
A good question. Yeah. So right now we do have a parking lot layer. We just want to improve it. So whether the parking lot is for the public or for parks staff, those are the things we want to apply to this layer.
Okay. I was just thinking if we have a usage some sort of usage measure on it at some point to look at sort of removing impermeable surfaces in the future. I know we have some parking lot, and
So right now, we are working on a park visitation study.
Yes.
Which will potentially get usage out of that. But yeah, we're
yeah,
still
way
working
ahead of
on
my
it.
question.
Yes, yes.
Very cool. All right,
There's
next.
definitely possibilities.
All right, those were great.
Thank you for your presentation. I particularly like how you use the data to improve the, I don't know if this is the correct word, but the investigation of the bridges and the community parks, gardens. I know that's very competitive with regards to gardening space, and being able to maximize and utilize that with the data is great. I was wondering if you could use the information to gauge client or customer satisfaction. The parks are a unique agency because you all strive to meet and exceed citizen, client, customer expectations. And are there any examples on how you use the data to meet and/or exceed citizen and customer satisfaction? And then I'm contrary probably to Dr. Hedrick here, but I like parking, and the reason why I like parking is it gives me an opportunity to visit other locations and parks that are not proximate to my neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you for your question. So yes, you asked about the
Customer satisfaction.
Yeah, the customer satisfaction, yes. So anything that has a location, we could potentially create that survey and then see which park is doing better versus another. Currently, we haven't done that within ours, but we're able to do that with anybody within the Parks Department. And that is always a potential for us, for sure.
And Commissioner Hedrick, one of the things that we've been working on is integration of our enterprise asset management and our customer service tools so that they speak to each other better.
So no other comments or questions, thank you. Again, we love hearing what you're doing, and everything I see, you're adding value, and our constituents in the county should be very proud of you for using their money very, very well and creating value. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And are we going right into the next? Okay, so we're going to go right into our next item number 6. Oh, okay, 5, that's right. Parks Foundation Board of Trustees, new nominee 2024. So, and who is, okay, Katie, you can present this item, thank you.
Sure, thank you so much. I am presenting for approval to the Foundation Board of Trustees, Allison Gillespie. She's been a longtime advocate for the Park Department. She was integral in the Open Parkways Initiative, and she's come to the foundation just really enthusiastic about supporting parks, primarily and helping raise philanthropic support. So I hope that the board will approve her nomination.
Well, thank you, Katie. Yep, I read through her bio and her application, and great bio. Looks like she loves the park. She also is an active user of the park, mountain biking and hiking and regular biking. So I have no question about approving her nomination. So do I have a motion to approve Katie as our next Board of Trustees for the Parks Foundation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 3-0. Welcome, Katie, to the Parks Foundation. Oh, I'm sorry.
Allison.
I'm sorry, Allison Gillespie. I'm sorry, Allison Gillespie to the Parks Foundation. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, and we're ready for the next two. We can go right into the. Okay, yeah, we'll take 2 minutes and we'll switch to the next call. Item 6, fiscal year 25-30 biennial CIP, fiscal year 26 capital budget adoption, where Parks is recommending adoption of this budget. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're on item number 6, fiscal year 25-30 biennial CIP/fiscal year 26 capital budget, where the Parks Department is requesting that the Planning Board adopt the biennial 25-30 capital improvements program, CIP, fiscal year 26 capital budget. So this afternoon, we have Ron Peel and Andy Frank with the Parks Department presenting. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. Again, I'm Ron Peel, for the record, the CIP manager for Montgomery Parks, and I'm joined by Andy Frank to my left, who's the division manager for the Parks Development Division and my immediate supervisor. Again, today we want to just present on and ask for the formal adoption of the Planning Board of the biennial CIP for FY25 through FY30. But before I get into the meat of the presentation in terms of what changes we're requesting, I just wanted to take a minute to sort of reemphasize a couple of points about the CIP and the capital budget. The CIP, again, is our 6-year plan for expenditures of very important investments we need to make in our parks system to continue the development of our parks. It is adopted in even number years. Our FY25 through 30 CIP totals $313 million and was adopted by the County Council in May of 2024. The capital budget, as a component of the larger CIP, is the actual authorization to spend funds for the next fiscal year. For this capital budget, which would be for FY26, it totals $56 million and would commence on July 1, 2025. For the biennial review, really essentially what we're asking ourselves is what has changed regarding the adopted CIP. And for this review, we have no amendments to the adopted CIP. Essentially, we're looking at some of the more routine sort of actions that we would take during a biennial review, which is kind of updating our expenditure closeout information for FY24 in this case. And one of the more notable things that we highlighted in the staff report is the pending transfer of the Parks Road PDF back from MCDOT back to Montgomery Parks. But the other thing we wanted to kind of close on as part of this presentation is to update the board on our implementation for FY24. We're happy to say that we now have some numbers and are prepared to share that information with the board. In terms of updating our expenditure information, here's an illustration of a PDF or a project description form, which is comprised of 2 major sections there, the top portion being where the data is on expenditure and activity, and the bottom portion on the narrative information. In this update, we have no changes to the narrative portion, and the top part on expenditure information is where we will be inputting FY24 expenditure updates that we're currently working on. For the Park Roads PDF transfer, and we talked about this at the last Planning Board presentation, we've been working on this for some time now, essentially it calls for the maintenance program to be transferred back to Montgomery Parks for 3 roads, which would include Sligo Creek, Parkway, Little Falls Parkway, and Beach Drive. We've had ongoing coordination and discussions, meetings with Montgomery Transportation, us, and OMB and council staff. We're currently working on updating the MOU, and so that kind of coordination is ongoing, and we are hoping and expect to have this transfer occur during this FY26 capital budget. So what I said earlier, one thing we wanted to kind of update the board on is implementation. Now that we have numbers, and here's a sort of a bar graph that shows a trend of how we've done since FY18 in our implementation numbers. And you can see the trend line is kind of, on an upward trajectory, which we are certainly happy about. But the thing that I would point out about FY24, it is a sort of a robust number in implementation, but I just wanted to emphasize that while out on the development side, we are still trending in the right direction. But part of the FY24 is because we had a couple of significant acquisitions occur in this fiscal year, so that kind of helped, with the expenditure number, but albeit part of our CIP implementation, so it has to be included in there. But the bottom line is that, we're on a upward trajectory.
I didn't want to, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah, sure.
but we're talking about the things like the purchase of the plots in Bethesda, the purchase of the horse farm, those kind of things were what's sort of driving it. We have had several of those, yeah.
And I think the $10 million acquisition, yeah.
Yes, I'm Andy Frank, Division Chief for PDD. Yes, the numbers for FY24, while we're very proud that we are doing very well with that, there was a $10 million purchase of a property in the Bethesda area that kind of tipped the scales on there. That is the thing about real estate acquisition. It is they're all unique, and the timing you can't control just so happened to fall into that year. So.
Yeah, I mean, even with that, I would say this is good. But yeah, I was just curious. I was making sure that was what I'm thinking about.
Okay. And the other piece is the one that kind of emphasizes that during the course of the year, obviously, to let contracts and to expend money, we have to, which is a financial concept, but we have to encumber the funds. So part of our performance or our implementation last year, we try to compare our past year and year encumbrance with the most recent year. And so in this case, and an encumbrance is essentially a commitment of funds, and the contracts to actually do work. For FY23, we had an end of year encumbrance amount of roughly $36 million. And at the end of FY24, that amount was about $46 million, which is roughly about $9.6 million increase in our encumbrance amount. This is significant because, in addition to the money, the cash out the door that we were able to execute in FY24, well, that constitutes another $9.6 million, $10 million in work that's committed but has not been expensed yet. So what we anticipate is that in FY25 and beyond, that encumbrance will be converted into cash expenditure as the work goes on. So that's also something that's positive for FY24. And with that, staff would like to make a request for formal approval by the board of the biennial FY25 through 30 CIP and FY26 capital budget.
Any comments or questions from the board?
No, nothing. That's good.
Yeah, thank you for your hard work and also for getting the transfer maintenance program going. That way you control your own fate there, and you can always put your own positive, quality. You're not waiting for someone else. You can do it yourself, and that's really important. So I have keep up the good work and keep implementing the pieces that you have, said you were going to implement, and that means you'll spend the money. So thank you. All right.
Can I move to?
Any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the fiscal year 25-30 biennial CIP and the fiscal year 26 capital budget?
Yeah. Move that we approve the CIP and the capital budget.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you so much. We'll just take a 2-minute break, and we'll go to our Next, item number 8, the brownstones at Westbard Square, site plan number F20240160, and forest conservation plan number F20240760, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're on item number 8, the brownstones at West Bard Square, site plan number 8/2024-0160, and Forest Conservation Plan number F/2024-0760, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. And this afternoon, we have Adam Bossi with the Planning Department presenting this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. Again, for the record, Adam Bossi, the lead reviewer for this project with the Down County Planning Team. As the Chair mentioned, this is the item for the brownstones at West Bard Square, site plan and final forest conservation plan, where 32 townhouse units are proposed for development, and staff is recommending approval with conditions. The location of the site is in the West Bard neighborhood of Bethesda. That's just west of Friendship Heights. By way of background, townhouse development of this site was originally envisioned with the 2016 West Bard sector plan. Subject site is shown here on the blue tone. Specific to the subject site, the sector plan recommended future development of it with townhouses, implementing on-site forest conservation and stream corridor enhancements, and realigning West Bard Avenue and Ridgefield Road, as well as Brookside Drive, adjacent to the site and its intersection with River Road. A few years later, in 2019, the Planning Board approved preliminary plan 170 for the Westwood Shopping Center. The preliminary plan area is outlined in white here. And again, the brownstones is part of that preliminary plan area. The preliminary plan approved a multi-phase mixed-use redevelopment across 23 acres, encompassing a series of properties that flank Brookside Drive and West Bard Avenue, with up to 410 multifamily units, 104 townhouses, and a little greater than 200,000 square feet of commercial uses. The preliminary plan also included the roadway realignment that was recommended by the sector plan. The preliminary plan in its approval requires site plan approval for each of the developments inside of the preliminary plan area. As shown here in orange on the image, two site plans have been approved for portions of the preliminary plan area. These are for redevelopment of the Westwood Shopping Center. That's the lower orange highlighted area. And that redevelopment includes 200 multifamily units, 70 townhouses, and a little greater than 171,000 square feet of commercial uses. And that's part of phase 1 of the preliminary plan. This was approved in 2019 and is currently under construction. There was also a site plan approved for the Kensington and Bethesda Senior Living Facility, approved in 2021 as part of phase 2 of the preliminary plan. That facility is also currently under construction. And under these approvals, the realignment of West Bard Avenue at Brookside Drive and Ridgefield Road was completed. Again, the subject brownstone site is shown here in blue, and this is the third site plan filed to move forward with the preliminary plan's vision. And the redevelopment of the site is part of phase 2 of the preliminary plan. Looking at the existing conditions of the site in the aerial image on the right, we can see the site is irregularly shaped with a larger square area in its southern half and a narrow linear portion in its northern half. The site was formerly home of the Manor Care Nursing Facility, which was demolished, and the site has since been used for construction staging, for the roadway realignment, and it is now also improved with a temporary sales trailer and associated parking area. As the aerial image shows, the roadway realignment adjacent to the site was in process when the aerial photo was taken. As you can see from the actual photo on the left side of the screen, the roadway realignment and associated improvements have been completed. Let's see, looking back at the aerial image, a portion of the Manor Care parking lot, we can see that extending into that thin linear portion of the property, which you can see again here in the aerial image. Most of this site is zoned CRT, and the small triangular piece at its northernmost portion is in the R60 zone. So speaking to the proposal itself, it is for the development of 32 townhouses with a max height of 45 feet. The development will include 12.5% MPDUs. That's 4 of the 32 units. All townhouse development is in the CRT zone portion of the site, and environmental enhancements are proposed within the CRT and R60 zone portions of the site. The layout of the townhouses has the far right and lower sticks of the units addressing the street, and MPDUs are located within those sticks or units. The upper stick and middle stick of the townhouse units are fronting on the common open spaces that are provided. Stormwater management is provided on site primarily through biomicro retention, and DPS has approved that stormwater concept plan. Environmental enhancements are proposed for that linear portion of the site adjacent to River Road, and I'll speak to those in a little bit more detail in a moment. The site design that we see here in front of us does align with the redevelopment vision of the sector plan as well as the underlying preliminary plan. Access and circulation for this property. Vehicular access is from one point at West Bard Avenue on the lower left portion of the image here, and this access point is consistent with what was approved with the preliminary plan. This provides access to a 20-foot wide internal alley, which the fire department has approved for their access needs. On-site parking is provided in garages for each unit. There's also some driveway spaces, as well as 3 parallel visitor parking spaces provided central in the development. Internal sidewalks are provided throughout the site, as shown here, and do connect to existing pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure on Brookside Drive and West Bard Avenue. We saw in that photo of the existing conditions, there are new and existing frontage improvements that were put on Brookside Drive and West Bard Avenue with the realignment of the roadway. Those consist of a separated bike lane and sidewalk on Brookside and a new 5-foot sidewalk on West Bard Avenue. This slide and the following slide have a couple illustrative images of the proposed townhouse units. This is an illustrative view of those units from the intersection of West Bard Avenue and Brookside Drive. And these have a similar design to the townhouse units that were approved for the shopping center site just down the street. Again, these are 3 floors with rooftop terraces. The facades are primarily clad with masonry and siding and earth tones, and they do include a mix of front and rear loaded units, which will all be accessed from the site's internal alley. Here we have another oblique, like bird's eye view looking across the proposed development. So we can see across some of those rooftop terrace areas and one of the common open spaces that these units front on. Regarding open space and recreation, the proposal provides for 2 on-site seating areas in the townhouse development area, which we can see hashed in green and white. There's a central public art seating area, and an image of that is shown on the lower portion of the slide. And there's a picnic and seating area, and that is shown in that top rendered image. We did receive a public comment about future pets in the development, so I did want to point out that the applicant is providing a dog waste station proximate to the picnic seating area. That long linear strip where the environmental enhancements are planned for the site does also count as common open space for the development. The open space requirement for this property is 10% of the site area, or about 10,000 square feet. Here, the applicant is able to provide about 41% of the site area, so about 41,000 square feet of common open space, which is fabulous. It's just under an acre. Screening is required between the townhouses and the existing single-family homes, generally in the area along the left side of the townhouse driveway, as highlighted in the image here. And screening is provided along this property line and consists of a privacy fence atop a retaining wall with trees and shrubs planted along that line. For most of this boundary, screening, the plantings provided slightly exceed what's required. Alternative compliance is requested for the lower 40 feet of that shared property line, and that's shown by the black dots and circled in red here. Here, that privacy fence is provided along the retaining wall, but there are fewer plantings provided in this area. And that's done to allow retention of a neighbor's existing driveway that encroaches on the townhouse property. Overall, there are more plantings provided than are required, and we do have a nice functional screen provided, and staff is supportive of the alternative compliance requests to allow for retention of that driveway and the screening that's provided. Environmental enhancements, as I mentioned earlier, are proposed for the linear portion of the site as recommended by the sector plan and the preliminary plan. Within this area is a portion of the Kenwood tributary. That's a small stream that flows eventually to Willett Branch to the southeast. The Kenwood tributary is located proximate to the property line here along River Road. And both the sector plan and preliminary plan had specific environmental enhancements recommended for this area. Those included stabilization of the stream bank that's there, where there's some significant erosion, management of invasive species, and some reforestation efforts. This treatment is generally prescribed for the areas that we see in blue on this image here. The preliminary plan and sector plan also recommended the removal of the remaining Manor Care parking lot, restoration of that soil, and planting trees there. That's proposed, and that's shown in green as well. The proposal does include 850 square feet of forest clearing within the stream valley buffer. This is shown in red. It's a small red triangle on the far right corner of the image here. In this area, that's where a stormwater management cell and a portion of the townhouse, one townhouse unit is proposed. So the variance is needed to allow for that small area of forest clearing within the stream valley buffer. And staff is supportive of that request. Within the same linear portion of the site, as required by the preliminary plan, there was a Category 1 forest conservation easement that has been recorded over the area in green here. So this is an existing Category 1 easement. Now, at the time of the preliminary plan and that first FCP approval, it was known some future adjustment to the easement would be needed. So they did include language in a condition of the recorded easement to allow for amendment essentially now. So the subject final forest conservation plan application that we're looking at now adjusts the Category 1 easement as shown here. Essentially, the areas in red are to be removed from the existing easement. The lower red strip is to be removed to address an existing encroachment by neighbors' fences. The small red square of the easement removal is to allow for that stormwater management feature I mentioned in the last slide. The blue areas that we see here are areas to be added to the Category 1 easement. And the net result of all these changes is we do have a larger Category 1 easement that's more contiguous. So it's expanded and does provide really that nice kind of complementary protection to the areas that will receive environmental enhancement. So staff is supportive of that variance request.
Just a quick question for clarity. What's the jump there between the triangle on the left side and the larger piece?
That's actually a portion of the River Road right-of-way.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it's a funky little part of it that sticks down
It
between
sticks
the
down,
property.
okay. I was thinking, it didn't say there was a road or anything there, so I was curious as to why okay, thank you.
So that area will remain clear? Is that, I mean, is that a path?
No, so that's wooded. It's in that stream valley area, and it's something that, it's off the applicant's property, so they won't be addressing things in there.
But functionally, it's contiguous with the rest of the easement.
Functionally, it's contiguous. As part of our review process, we've been in touch with SHA about this area too. So I think moving forward in the future, the applicant may have some coordination to do with SHA once they start working on enhancements in that area.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Regarding community outreach, the applicant did comply with all the noticing and submittal requirements. Those are satisfied. We did receive correspondence from 2 community members during the review process with general questions, which we were able to respond to. We did receive correspondence from 1 community member after the staff report was published, which the board has in their backup. And I believe I addressed those concerns during our discussion here, where parking is provided. We do have visitor parking provided on site, and we do have a dog waste station being provided for pests. With that, staff is pleased to make the following recommendations. We believe that the application satisfied the zoning ordinance and forest conservation law as applicable and substantially conform with the 2016 West Bard Sector Plan as conditioned. And staff is pleased to recommend approval of the site plan and final forest conservation plan with the conditions as presented in the staff report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bossy. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Aaron Gerard with Lurch-Lillian Brewer, here on behalf of the applicant. To my right is Jack Lester with EYA. To my left is Jack McLaurin with EYA. We also have a full complement of consultants in the audience that are available to answer any questions that you may have. We coordinated with staff about the presentation and supplying the rendering, so we don't have a separate presentation to make, but we would like to thank staff for all their efforts and just say generally we're very excited about this next phase of West Bard that some of us have been working on for years and years, and it is taking fruition, as anyone who has been out there has seen. This is completely in accordance with what the sector plan envisions, and like I said, we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Do any of the board members have questions or comments?
No, it looks good to me.
Okay.
I like the style and the diversity of the housing. It looks great.
Yeah, it looks like a very attractive project. One question, so there was a question about is there enough visitor parking? I see you have 3 spaces there. Are there any spaces, off-street parking anywhere in the community? I just wanted to.
I believe
ask-
along Old Westbard, there's on-street parking, and then obviously this is kitty corner from the new Westbard redevelopment, which will have garage parking.
Great, great. So I have no other comments or questions. Do I have a motion? Should we do two approvals? Okay, we'll do two approvals. One to have a motion to approve the site plan number 8202400160, where staff is recommending approval with conditions.
I'll move to approve the site plan.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. And do I have a motion to approve the Forest Conservation Plan number F20240760, where staff is recommending approval with conditions?
Yeah, move to approve the forest conservation plan.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
You know, we look forward to having more housing in the county, and we hope it gets started as soon as possible. Thank you. And we're going to take just a 3-minute break and then start with item number 7, briefing master plan reality check, the 2002 Potomac Subregion Master Plan, where staff is recommending to brief the board. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're on item number 7, briefing of the Master Plan Reality Check 2002 Potomac Subregion Plan, where staff is briefing the board. And this morning, Bhavna Subramanian is presenting. And you will introduce, yeah. But thank you so much, and we look forward to your presentation.
I'm actually going to start off.
Okay, I'm sorry.
For the record, Nick Holdscomb, Bhavna Siva Subramanian, Research and Strategic Projects Division. An important, though often overlooked process in planning is evaluating master plan visions, prescriptions, and predictions, as well as how conditions have unfolded through the course of a plan's timeline. The Master Plan Reality Check project involves establishing data and indicators to determine how successful implementation has been and whether the anticipated change has occurred. The ultimate intention is to explore whether traditional assumptions are still solid or if they need some form of recalibration to create a more effective planning process that is more aligned with real-world outcomes. By assessing the difference between a plan's aspirations and the on-the-ground reality among a broad set of planning criteria, the studies also shed light on why some plan aspects materialize as envisioned and others do not. The agenda today is to do a brief introduction and background. Then Bhavna will go into the methodology and the report structure, then the results, and finally some takeaways and implications, and then hopefully a lively conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Holdscomb.
Oh, I wasn't done. So Montgomery County has a long history of monitoring efforts, as seen in the slide here. The Master Plan Reality Check project was first funded in fiscal year 2016 by the County Council and resulted in the original Reality Check, where we studied in depth 3 plans: the 1989 Germantown Master Plan, the 1997 Fairland Master Plan, and the 1998 Friendship Heights Sector Plan. We pulled out every data point that was possible and exhaustively analyzed each piece. Following that, the second reality check, which is called the Master Plan Checkup, where we were a little more surgical about the process, just finding some common data points and that are easy to capture, looking at non-residential, residential, community facilities, and transportation points. Now we picked the project up again with this third iteration that we're talking about today. Next slide, please. We thought conceptually about the Master Plan Reality Check in 2 ways: goals and processes. What should this do, and how are we going to do it, and how are we going to do it with quantitative data? As for the goals, the first goal was to gauge the implementation of master plan goals and vision. The second goal was to examine why certain outcomes that were set out in the master plan were or were not met. Finally, based on the indicators that we established to make some recommendations of potential changes to the master planning process. This slide shows some of the thinking of plan selection, applying mainly to the studies prior, but still relevant today. Besides the checkup project, we looked for plans that reached their horizon dates, which are usually around 20 years, tried to diversify the geographies of plans, looked for institutional knowledge, both within the department and in communities, and relied on preserved data sets that guided the planners in their work. Finally, it should be noted that this is not meant as a value judgment on the plan or the planning process or the planners at the time, but an evaluation of the plan's assumptions and how they performed over time. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Siva Subramanian.
Hi, so I'll be starting off by giving some background on the 2002 Potomac Subregion Master Plan. So the Potomac Subregion derives its name from the Potomac River that flows along its southern border here. The subregion has an area of approximately 66 square miles, and it's bounded by 270 and 495 here on the east, Potomac River, as I mentioned, on the south, Darnestown Road and the city of Rockville to the north, and then Seneca Creek to the west. And this is the boundary, the subregion boundary is what was used in the analysis to follow. And I just want to note that some of these areas have been incorporated into other master plans since 2002, but this is the region that we've used for this analysis. So the first area master plan for this area was adopted in 1967, another in 1980, and then this one in 2002. And prior to this 2002 plan, and to inform a lot of the recommendations in the 2002 plan, there was an environmental resources plan in 2000. And the primary challenges facing the subregion in 2002 included protecting environmentally sensitive areas, maintaining a low-density residential character, and enhancing park, recreational, and transportation links. So overall, the Potomac Master Plan really centered on the careful preservation of environmental resources and the strategic development of the remaining vacant property. The master plan has 4 sections: environment, land use and zoning, transportation, and community facilities. And the report that I will be going through goes through each of these sections, the recommendations that are part of it. So now I'll delve a little into the methodology and the report structure itself. So this study really employed both quantitative and qualitative analysis to really evaluate all the parts of the master plan. And given the range of recommendations, it was necessary to collect information from a variety of sources. Primarily, we used the GIS layer files of our department to conduct a lot of the quantitative analysis, and we built out in ArcGIS Pro an extensive repository of the spatial data. We also looked through preliminary plans and site plans to complement this spatial data, as well as had a lot of conversations and discussions with planning department and other county staff to gather specialized data for sector-specific recommendations. We also spoke with individuals who were involved in the creation and implementation of the plan to get further context about the subregion. And then some staff on an RSP also conducted a site visit last August to evaluate some of the qualitative recommendations in the plan. So as Nick mentioned, this evaluation is not meant to be a critique of the plan recommendations themselves, but rather an assessment of the extent to which the recommendations have been met. So to this end, we decided to create a high-level scoring system to evaluate some of the recommendations, and the table here shows kind of 4 buckets that we had for criteria. So recommendation met, the recommendation partially met, the recommendation not met, and then in certain instances, the recommendation could not be evaluated based on the relevancy of the recommendation. And so now I'll delve into the reality check itself following the 4 sections of the master plan. So starting with environment, which was really a major component of the master plan. So the overall vision that is stated in the 2002 master plan is to protect the subregion's rich natural environment and unique ecosystems, maintain and reaffirm a low-density residential green wedge for most of the subregion. The master plan notes that the subregion's natural resources, including forests, floodplains, wetlands, and stream valleys, benefit the entire region and should be preserved and protected. So there were several recommendations around reforestation and preservation of the forested areas in the subregion. I will focus specifically on number 4 down here, which was a recommendation to acquire by dedication 12 specifically identified parcels of land as parkland or conservation easements when acquisition or dedication was not possible. And as you can see in the map on the right here, of the 12 recommended parcels, 9 have been acquired by dedication today. And of particular note was the acquisition of the Miller and Smith property, which is a 258-acre property, as well as the Tipton tributary properties, which is 65 acres, and that has all become part of the Serpentine Barrens Conservation Park here in the center of the subregion.
Before we get off on before we move on from this one, I was curious about the figures 3 and 4 with the forest conservation pieces. I was having trouble sort of determining, it says partially met, and if this is something we want to go into later or offline, that's perfectly fine. But it's about it's the forest cover ones, the parcels recommended to be restored. And it seems like most of the restoration has happened on sort of the islands within the Potomac there. And I was just seeing if you could add a little bit more information on sort of the how the forest cover and forest preservation parts have been met or not met.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, these 2 maps are really showing kind of the forest the restoration in 2002 versus the forest cover today. And the legend in the figure 3 is showing kind of the priority of restoration categories.
With 1 being the highest and 4 being the lowest priority, I think. Just how active are we there? What things are sort of preventing that? And if this is an offline conversation, it's an offline conversation. We can talk about it later. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I can
was
definitely get
curious.
back to you with more details about the extent to which it's been, meeting the exact recommendations. But the one that I did want to point out was in the plan, they did specify 12 particular parcels, and of those 12 parcels, 9 have been significantly met. And you can see here the 3 that have not been met in red are really quite small. And they include a surplus school site, a vacant school site, and a single-family detached property. And so these are much smaller relative to these other larger green parcels, especially the Serpentine Barrens Conservation Park, which was a really significant and notable acquisition.
No, these are great acquisitions. Yeah, I was just curious on the forest preservation and sort of reforestation portion of the plan, in addition to sort of the large-scale park acquisitions, which is really good. And like I said, I see that sort of the Potomac Islands have seemed to be where the most of it is. But when it says partially met, just what if any obstacles are there to reforestation outside the acquisition of those parcels? And if that's an offline, perfectly fine to talk about it later. But I was curious. I was really struck by that piece of it. I was interested in sort of what other things might be available for us to do to sort of do that kind of reforestation in addition to sort of the park purchases.
Sure, that's an interesting question and a good eye, if you don't mind my saying, to even notice that. I think we should check with our friends in Up County Forest Conservation, and we can definitely loop some information back to you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So one of the other primary recommendations in the environmental section of the plan was around sewer service. So this was one of the greatest challenges facing the Potomac subregion, and the 2002 master plan was really trying to develop compatible land use and sewer service recommendations that protected the subregion's environmental quality. And so one of their major recommendations was around area-specific sewer service limitations in Glen Hills, Piney Branch Subwatershed, Darnestown Triangle, and Hanson Farms. And to date, these have been met. Specifically in March of 2023, the County Council denied or deferred 6 water or sewer category change requests in Glen Hills based on this 2002 master plan exclusion of Glen Hills from the sewer service policy. So now going into land use and zoning, in the 2002 master plan, they state to rely on the land use framework established by earlier plans to strengthen and support the subregion's residential communities. New development and redevelopment must respect and enhance the subregion's environmental quality while helping build communities and resources that would serve the existing and future generations of residents. So to give just a little bit of background and context on the residential development in the subregion, some parts of the plan offered forecasts, not necessarily recommendations, but more predictions of what would happen within 20 years. And so the forecast for residential development by 2020 that was stated in the 2002 plan was to hit 32,000 dwelling units. And as of 2023, this recommendation or forecast has been met. And a further breakdown of these dwelling units can be seen in this figure here on the left. And between 2002 and 2023, sorry, just lost my place. There's a slight decrease in the share of single-family detached units, so from 79% to 74% today. And during this time, there was a doubling in the share of small-scale multifamily units in the subregion from 5% to 10%, while the share of single-family attached units stayed approximately the same over the past 2 decades. And now looking on the right to housing tenure, unsurprisingly, the subregion has remained primarily owner-occupied since the time of the master plan. And as a comparison point, the home ownership rate of the county in 2021 was 65.7%. So really, this region is predominantly owner-occupied, despite the slight increase in renter, but from 8% to 12%. So one of the major recommendations of this plan, and given the older demographic of the subregion, was around senior housing. It should be noted that the master plan doesn't define very specifically what constitutes as senior housing. It lacks details on the minimum age of residents and the required facilities of these developments. The terms housing for the elderly and senior housing and older households were kind of used interchangeably within this section, and not extremely well categorized. But we decided to kind of look at the recommendation today and see how well they did. So the recommendation was specifically to build an additional 750 units within the next 20 years within the subregion's boundaries, and this was on top of the existing or approved units in 2002. So we've calculated that excluding those mentioned in the master plan, 567 units have been constructed since 2002, and there are an additional 261 approved or in the pipeline, leading to a total count of 828 and meeting the master plan's goal of an additional 750 senior housing units. As you can see here in the map on the left, this is a map from the 2002 plan, and there are certain sites that are listed as potential for senior housing. Of these sites, none are being exclusively used for this purpose today, and some of these reasons can be due to the language in the master plan. So the master plan encourages senior housing throughout the subregion wherever zoning permits, either by right or as conditional use. And so the two approved and pending developments, Spectrum and Heritage Potomac, have both employed conditional use applications to build in alternate locations.
Just a quick question, another one before we move on from this. Do you have an idea of are these assisted living facilities or these just age-restricted facilities? Like, is there anything, or are there themes or consistencies through that? I mean, there's different types of senior housing is my question.
Yeah, so we do have the breakdown of these various types. Off the top of my head right now, I can't tell you exactly which ones, but I'm happy to get back to you with exactly what the breakdown is within the categories of senior housing.
Yeah, if I missed it in the report, that was good. I was curious if this is primarily just senior restricted style housing, or if this is more assisted facility having the assistance. So, but yeah, if you have that, that'd be great. Thank you.
We can definitely get that breakdown. Yep.
I am a little surprised, I mean, that there's so many in this area.
It's an interesting place for them to be.
You know, like, yeah, it's composed, but I think compared to other, I don't see if there is something on other areas today, how many, and are they closer to more of a downer town, or were there more amenities? I wouldn't think there are a lot of amenities.
Yeah, I mean, they're clustered a little bit about some areas where there might be, access. But I'm just curious as to if we're seeing this sort of development like near Damascus and Clarksburg, there's large communities of mostly single-family homes that are just age-restricted, 55-plus communities, or if this is a development of more of the assisted living and institutional styles that we've seen in other areas.
Sure. One thing that I will say is that senior housing, much like what Bhavna was saying, is it's pretty ill-defined, and there's not really a whole lot of data that really breaks things down. Research is actually working on a project right now to really delve into the senior housing scene, if you will, and really build a really dynamic data set. It's out there, but you have to pull it together from a ton of different sources, and then
That
so
makes
we're trying to
sense.
work on that right now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about the school facilities or the APFO within this area, but given that senior housing typically doesn't trigger school requirements or anything like that, then if this area is, off the top of my head, I don't remember the maps that we have for school crowding or anything like that. But I'd be curious, given that there seems to be a fairly high concentration relative to what I assume is the overall population there. It's interesting.
And now in terms of affordable housing, so the plan explicitly notes that the subregion has several constraints that have resulted in less new affordable housing development than other parts of the county. It notes large residential lots, the plan area's low density zoning, and land values as some of those reasons. And also should be noted, in 2002, MPDUs were not required in zones of 1 acre or more. But since then, due to policy changes in the 2018 update, 15% MPDUs are now required in the Potomac planning area, as it's a high income planning area. So the recommendation, or one of the major recommendations in the plan, it didn't specify a specific number, but it did say to retain and expand the supply of affordable housing in the Potomac subregion. So in 2000, and these are numbers from the 2002 master plan itself, there were 800 government subsidized or mandated affordable housing units, which constituted 5.1% of the county share. And in 2022, this number had increased to just over 1,000, but the share had decreased to 4.4% of the county's affordable units. And notably, two of the recent major residential developments in the Potomac area opted for alternative agreements in lieu of providing the mandated MPDUs. So the first is Quarry Springs, which is a mid-rise condominium development, and it settled on a $1.7 million alternate payment for the 15 MPDUs not provided on site. And the second example is Park Potomac, and which are high-rise condos and rentals, and they also settled on a almost $2.7 million alternate payment for the 31 MPDUs not provided on site. So now getting into a little more context on employment, this again is a forecast that was put out in the 2002 plan where they predicted 23,000 jobs by 2020. And using quarterly census of employment and wages data from 2021, we found that this forecast had been met. And this map on the right is showing job density in the subregion. So unsurprisingly, there are hot spots around the Montgomery Mall here, around Potomac Village Center here, and then lighter concentrations around Cabin John Center and Park Potomac, and then also up here in Treville Gateway Development. And as I was mentioning at the very beginning, what's overlaid here are other master plans, and so this shows kind of the overlap and potential impact that other master plans are having in these hotspots. So the Rock Spring sector plan overlaps with the Montgomery Mall, and the GSSC minor master plan overlaps with the Treville Gateway, which are contributing to some of the job growth in these areas. So to look a little deeper at the land use and zoning recommendations in the master plan, we decided to pull out 6 case study developments and kind of do a deep dive into each of these. I'll present on 3 today just for the sake of time. But the first one, the 3 I'll be presenting kind of provide a spectrum of how well the recommendations have been met in the subregion. So the first one is Potomac Village. This is a 26-acre center at the intersection of Falls and River Roads. And in 2002, the site was nearly completely built out with almost 338,000 square feet of commercial development. But the vision from the master plan was for it to become a pedestrian-friendly mixed-use village center that had primarily retail uses, but also offices, housing, and some other entertainment and recreational activities that were all kept at the compact village scale. Since 2002, very little has changed in Potomac Village. It's not become this pedestrian-friendly mixed-use village center that was envisioned in the master plan. There hasn't been any housing built near the offices and retail, and without much investment, it's not very likely that the vision of this master plan will come to fruition. The next site that we looked at was Cabin John Center. So this is a 25-acre site located in the northeast quadrant of Tuckerman Lane and Seven Locks Road. And at the time in 2002, there was quite a bit of commercial space already built there. Similar to the Potomac Village, the vision in the master plan was for a pedestrian-friendly mixed-use village center with primarily retail, but also offices, housing, open space, and entertainment. The developer of this site, the Eden, decided to go with a phased approach, and so it's currently in phase 1 of development, so some elements mentioned in the master plan are planned but not yet built. There have been some variations from the master plan vision, including the number and location of townhouses. So townhouses originally in 2002 were planned here, and now they are located in the northeast quadrant here. There's no designated senior housing, so housing for the elderly was recommended to be located here, and that has not been added. And a site plan staff report from 2019 notes that the master plan envisioned completely raising the site to achieve this vision. But as I mentioned, the developer has now been using a phased approach, and so that kind of accounts for some of the variations we see between the master plan vision and today. And then lastly, I want to talk about Park Potomac, which is a 51-acre site in the northwest quadrant of 270 and Montrose Road. And in 2002, this was an undeveloped wooded area, so it was a completely greenfield site. And the vision for the master plan was to become an area with mixed uses, compact pedestrian-friendly development pattern, and not just a single-use office park, but with a lot of open space and other uses. And for the most part, Park Potomac resembles the concept envisioned in the 2002 master plan. It's become a pretty successful mixed-use development with residential units, retail options, office buildings, and open space. There are some deviations from the master plan. Firstly, no explicit senior housing has been built in this development, though it was recommended as a potential location for such housing in the 2002 master plan. Interestingly, there has been an increase in residential density relative to the initial preliminary plan. The site plan from 2023 proposes a modification to one of the parcels that was initially approved for office use, but is now being allowed for multifamily residential use. And then lastly, one more variation from the recommendation is with regards to tree preservation. So this, on the western side, this tree preservation you can see has been preserved, but the tree preservation on the eastern side has not. And lastly, I wanted to talk about one unanticipated development. The past three were ones that were recommended in the plan, but though master plans can dictate the broad type of development that can take place, they can't always predict how the land ultimately gets used. And so a particular example of this type of development is the Glenstone Museum. And this is a institution that's located on 230 acres of land near Glen Road. And the site was originally multiple parcels, but the owners, Mitch and Emily Rails, bought several properties and built a house and museum to house their art collection. The property had significant sewer extension that wasn't anticipated by the master plan, but remained in accordance with the 10-year water supply and sewerage systems plan. So this is just an example of the need of planners to be flexible and kind of adapt to unpredicted development despite master plan recommendations. So looking at development pipeline can provide some insight into what has been planned for the subregion and add some context to development goals. Currently, 85.7% of pipeline development in the subregion is residential. Of these, 81% are multifamily units and 19% are single-family units. And most of the residential and non-residential development is planned for mixed-use development. So as I showed with the three case studies, all three of those were visioned to be mixed-use developments. So this is really kind of a trend that we're seeing throughout the county. It should be noted that the average age of projects in the pipeline for the subregion is 13.3 years. So more than 40% of the projects have been in the pipeline for more than 15 years, and it kind of speaks to, it brings into question kind of whether or not these projects will really be built. So now going to transportation, this is the next section in the master plan. The overall vision is to maintain a transportation network that provides needed links and alternatives while preserving the subregion's semi-rural character. The plan states to create a comprehensive system that, while not alleviating congestion, can serve residential communities and commercial centers and preserve the subregion's physical character. So to this end, there are a couple recommendations that are really in line with preserving the community's visual aspect, one being the two-lane road policy that was set out in the 1980 plan, and the 2002 plan recommends to maintain this, and it has been maintained. The second recommendation I'll speak about is with regards to the rustic roads program. In 2002, there were 5 designated rustic roads. This 2002 plan then added 9 additional rustic roads. And in July of 2023, with the Rustic Roads Functional Master Plan update, 6 of these 9 were approved as designated and 3 had some changes. There is a note in the 2023 update that calls out the 2002 master plan for lacking road profiles and details on why designations were recommended. So this comment can serve as guidance for rustic road sections for future master plans. There were some recommendations on bikeways. 11 bike routes were added to the master plan of bikeways through this plan. However, none have been fully constructed. There are significantly more planned bikeway routes than existing ones in the subregion. And additionally, there was a recommendation around bike racks at community facilities. And according to the Bicycle Master Plan Biennial Monitoring Report in 2022, only the Potomac Community Recreation Center met this industry established need. And that's something that monitoring report also showcased as a county-wide problem, where only 8% of the total needed bicycle parking was available in the county. In terms of transit serviceability, there was a recommendation to establish 2 multimodal transit centers, and both of these have been constructed, as well as to support a study of paratransit options for Tobytown, which is a historic community located here. And in October of 2016, the County Council approved a budget for a new bus service to Tobytown, which is Route 301, so this has been operating since then. And the last section is community facilities. The 2002 plan states that to establish and expand community facilities to provide needed services and help create a sense of community, social cohesion developed from a feeling of belonging to a local area and having an interest and stake in what happens there. So this includes parks and public open space. And so with its location along the Potomac River and C&O Canal, the subregion really contains a lot of public open space and parks. And according to the 2002 master plan, the subregion had over 3,400 acres of parkland. In 2023, this has gone up to just over 8,000 acres of parkland. And one of the specific recommendations was around the Hanson Farm Local Park, which is pending and getting ready to be delivered. And along with this is 20 acres of Stream Valley Park in the Cabin John Stream Valley area. So the public facilities that are addressed in the plan include community centers, libraries, safety services, and regional service centers. And for the most part, the recommendations for the improvement of these facilities has been met. The ones not met that were included in the plan were of lower priority. And specifically to call out the newly constructed North Potomac Community Recreation Center and the significant renovation of the Scotland Neighborhood Recreation Center. And finally, looking at schools, there was a recommendation in 2002 to find a new middle school site. And so the Board of Education had a search site within the Darnestown Triangle. And the plan was recommending to not be located here as it was outside the recommended sewer service envelope. And so this was met, and a new middle school was opened in 2005 to serve the Quince Orchard cluster needs. There was also recommendations throughout the plan around repurposing surplus school sites and turning them into parks. And this, at the time, this was really in line with the influx of new school construction in the 80s and 90s. And then in the 2000s, the phase of determining what to do with these excess buildings. However, over the past 20 years, the trend in school construction has kind of shifted back to accommodating students and through opening additional schools. And so there, since 2002, have not been any school sites that have been declared a surplus or turned into parks. So I now want to kind of take a step back and provide you with some major big takeaways. Takeaways both about this specific Potomac reality check as well as implications for master planning in general. So overall, we can say that there was successful implementation of the plan recommendations, particularly with regards to the careful preservation of environmental resources and the development of the remaining vacant property in the subregion. Greenfield development was more frequently fully implemented than infill development, as we saw in the examples of Potomac Village that was already existing, saw less of the in line with the master plan vision relative to Park Potomac, which was built on greenfield land. There was an emphasis on residential development over commercial development, a trend that we've kind of seen throughout the county and throughout the country recently. And Park Potomac is an example of this as well, where dwelling units actually that exceed the limit set by the master plan have been approved on a parcel that was originally designated as office use. In conducting this analysis, it became apparent that comparing conditions in 2002 with conditions today was not always feasible, given changes in terminologies, definitions, classifications. There were also some terms that were not well defined in the master plan, and that made it difficult to really conduct an apples-to-apples comparison. And so that's something to keep in mind as we write master plans, is to really define terminology clearly. And lastly, as Nick was explaining in the beginning of the several other iterations of the master plan reality check that we've done, it kind of brings into, oh, sorry, one last point, yep. It brings into scale the size and scope of master plans over time. And so this Potomac subregion is really quite a large subregion, and nowadays our Montgomery County plans are happening at a much smaller scale, and this kind of affects the evaluation as well as the depth that master plans can get into. And lastly, just to give some broader reality check takeaways, and these are echoing some of the findings that we found in our previous iterations of this project. The importance of data documentation and organization. So preserving data used at the time of master plan analysis to really document baseline assumptions. Understanding economic conditions, so doing more detailed market analysis as part of a master plan can provide more quantitative data on baseline conditions and support for recommendations. Acknowledging flexibility, so plans really reflect the time and place in which they're completed, as well as the unique plan area characteristics. And then the importance of monitoring, so performing master plan reality checks before the horizon date can really help determine if incentives or other interventions should be considered to stimulate development. So with that, thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
I appreciate this, and this is a theoretical question, or like me thinking out loud. Sometimes I get the feeling that master plans are an ideal, and they're dependent on desires of developers and builders. And do master plans have the flexibility to allow for someone to build what they want to build as opposed to what they are required to build? And so when you look at, infill development, more residential than commercial, are master plans too stringent in limiting development?
Well, I can take a first stab at that. I think that most staff, and maybe you said it strangely, I heard it strangely. I don't think anybody would agree that master plans are for the developers. They're for the community, and if that involves certain developments or those kinds of things, then it can become part of the master plan, as far as like designating a parcel or a certain thing. But I think we're also seeing, we do this all the time in our research products, you can start off a little bit more exploratory. You can then find out what the community wants or what is needed, and then we're starting to see more and more in the master plans more flexible language. That's the whole point of the CR zone. So yeah, that's a first comment.
Yeah, I like that comment because the community desire and what they want is important, but is it always feasible? When you look at who's going to do the building and what their motivation is, and I think with developers or builders, there's two motivations. One is they like to build stuff, and then two is what will be their reward if they build it, and their reward more oftentimes than not is not charitable, it's profitable. And so if you have a master plan that is focused solely on the community and not the duality of what the community wants and what is feasible and what will the developer wants to build and whether or not they could realize a gain from doing it, there's a balance there. And so I think, community input is paramount, but at the same time, there has to be a balance to incentivize people who are going to take the risk in building things, because the government's not going to build it, right? And so it's going to be more often than not that a private entity or individual is going to build it, and because they may desire something different than the master plan, and what the community wants, is there any flexibility there?
And for the record, Carrie McCarthy, Division Chief for Research and Strategic Projects, and I think that's a great philosophical question that's at the crux of all of the planning work we do, of how to, one, we're not forecasters, we're not psychics, we can't exactly predict the future, and we do these plans with a long time horizon, and we want to provide a framework based on the community input, the business community input, developers, that, we represent the future residents in some ways, people who haven't been born yet, who want to live someplace in Montgomery County. And then also, what's realistic, and keep it balanced, that there's these guardrails and a vision, but we're also not, like Houston, where they have no zoning and you can do whatever you want.
And I was just going to say,
Good point.
you guys both said it. The key word has got to be balance, right? Yeah, that's paramount to anything. Although you see in especially older master plans that we analyzed in the master plan reality check, master planners were asking for some stuff that didn't really seem very, very realistic. And I think it's very different now, and I think that speaks a lot to Bhavna's point of having more data-driven products that inform decision-making and recommendations. Because, like you said, community desire and feasibility are completely two separate things, and often have polar outcomes.
I think we have a climate right now, taking consideration, one of Mr. Hedrick's passion is enough housing, and are our master plans restricting housing? And if the master plans were more flexible, could we build more housing? Because I would bet and guess that private entities or individuals who develop and build would like to take advantage of a more flexible master plan to meet market conditions. And I think the market condition we have right now is the want and need for more affordable housing.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that great comments, but and thank you for your presentation. It's always good to look back and say, how did we get here, or did we achieve the things we were thinking about and have, and so how could we look at it differently? And there aren't, everything's not in our control. We can't necessarily control the environmental conditions, the economic conditions, and that drives sort of the outcomes. You expect it to go in this direction, but some things are outside of our control. But I also would like to, put in a pitch for the planning staff and the board, in that, we just did our general plan, Thrive Montgomery 2050. First you look at how do we grow the county in a sustainable way, an equitable way, and how we're looking at, given where we think we want to go, to what kind of transportation systems do we need? Before it was more car-centric. Now we're trying to get less car-centric, using mass transportation, the BRT, the metro, the Purple Line, and how to walkable communities. So we learn over time, and we change. But the biggest piece you talk about is flexibility. We learn, takeaways is flexibility, and the planning staff is talking about how the more of the form-based code. How do we look at that? And so that, yes, you don't say exactly what needs to go, but it's but you look at density, and whatever fits in the density fits in the density. So we are creating. You're looking into. The guys are the experts to looking. How do we become more flexible? So this is wonderful that you're doing this. We're learning from what we do in the past, and I appreciate your presentation. And Cedric, do you have any parting words here?
Just a few.
Okay.
This is a really great, report and oversight. I think this is fantastic work, and it is, as Chairman Ayers has said, interesting to go through piece by piece, recommendation by recommendation, and see. I'm a little disappointed in the bike rack situation, but that's more personal than anything else. But I think from one of the things that we're thinking about with, Commissioner Bartley was saying with housing and development, if you look through MC Atlas and see the zoning on the sites, mostly there is known almost none of the zoning that we use for really producing the kind of mixed use and walkable development that we want. We said we wanted it, but we didn't do the things we needed to do to get it. We don't have a CR zone. Actually, I think in 2002, I'm not sure if we would have had a CRT if it had been something else. But we don't have the zones that we get that stuff out of within Potomac. So I think that I thought the case studies were incredibly helpful and useful. So again, this is a really excellent report and presentation all around. But I think this was 20 years ago. We've had 20 plus years of hindsight, but it's a really interesting transition period between a lot of rhetoric around the goals that we want, but not a lot of the implementation of the things we need to do to get there. So I think we're seeing the results of not taking the rhetoric and implementing it in the way we need to within the zoning maps, because if you take a look at MC Atlas, we're just not, it's all large-scale residential through most of the thing, which is fine, but even in the areas in which we identified, and were identified in the case studies, they don't have the zoning flexibility that they need, and the zones are very, very tight around those areas. Potomac Village, Kevin John, like those are super small, and then immediately drops off to RE2 or R200 zones at best. And so we've got I think this is an interesting case study overall of where the rhetoric was at the time and then where the implementation was at the time. And it's interesting to look back over that over a couple of decades, because if we want to achieve some more of the goals of the master plan, we have to do the things that we would need to do to get there, implement a CRT or a CRN zone in most of those areas, I think expand it around it, and put in the things in place, the things we need to do to achieve the goals we say we want. Because those zones are really tight. They're really not flexible as flexible as they need to be. And it means that you get those 1 or 2 very large scale attempts at very wide developments on very large properties, and not the sort of external, there's no multiplication effect from that. There's now, I can't put residential around the office because I don't have the flexibility to do it. If I'm next to it, I can't put townhomes in the next plot over because I'm not allowed to. So we've got, I think this was a good one to take a look at, because this wasn't that long ago when we had a rhetoric direction and then an implementation direction. Those two didn't necessarily come together as much as they should have. So as we're going forward, it's something to take a look at on master plans that we're doing in the future, to say that if we have a goal, we have to put the things in there to meet that goal, and that includes taking up the zoning that we need for that. So thank you very much for this. It was really excellent work. I will now stand down from my soapbox.
Okay, but one of the things you did bring up, and you brought up about Potomac Village and Cabin John Center, it is very hard to create more density. We have no more greenfields, right? You saw that in Park Potomac, it was, it's pretty much a greenfield, and how you got all that development there. So what do you need to put in place in areas where they're already built out? I mean, somewhat. How do you incentivize more infill development, right? Because then you start backing up into existing communities. And so that's the challenge that we're really need to also figure out how to solve that going forward. But great comments from the board, and thank you again. Okay. So we're going to take sorry.
I was just going to say, if I could have one more second, I'd like to recognize Ms. Siva Subramanian for driving this. She's done an incredible amount of work, and her thoroughness is just like beyond the pale. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We duly noted. We see it all here. Thank you so much. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll go with our last item, which is item number 9, Pashaw Land Administrative Subdivision number 620240080, and preliminary/final forest conservation plan number 2/2024-0270, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're on our last item of today, item number 9, Pass Shall Land Administrative Subdivision number 6, 2024-0080, and preliminary/forest, final forest conservation plan number F 2024-0270, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. And this afternoon, we have Josh Penn of the Planning Department presenting this project. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, Josh Penn with the Upcounty Planning Division, filling in for Jonathan Casey, who's having twins today, I believe. So we have excitement news that we'll have new future planners coming on board eventually. But in the meantime, I will be presenting his preliminary plan and forest conservation plan to you all. We do have Pascal Land, Administrative Subdivision, and preliminary/final forest conservation plan. Staff is recommending approval of both the administrative subdivision and the preliminary final forest conservation plan. You can see here we're in the northwest quadrant of the county at 24724 Peachtree Road. It is at 109 and Old 100 Road. It is approximately 1 mile south of Frederick County line and 1 mile west of I-270. It is in the 1980 Eros Master Plan, and Peachtree Road is a rustic road. You can see here, this is the complete site, which is about 115.24 acres. It is AR zoned. You can see the houses, existing house over here, barns, and roadway structure in the farm fields. Frontage is on, and access are both to Peachtree Road over here to the east. There are some large forest stands off here. It is W6 and S6, which means it is on well and septic. The proposal is to create a single 6.16 acre lot around the existing single-family home. It will be served by well and septic, and there will be 109.02 agricultural remainder that will remain unplatted as an unplatted parcel. You can see here that your frontage is going to be here, but your access is going to be coming around this existing private driveway serving the house here as it is currently today. So there are no proposed changes with this plan. It's just the creation of a lot around an existing house. The frontage is here through the pipe stem, which serves two purposes for the plan. It eliminates the need for a finding of a lot without frontage, and it also takes care of some of their forest conservation requirements by placing 50 feet and 20,000 square feet minimums of area into Cat 1 easement. There will be a flag lot finding for this. Staff does agree with this flag lot as it does preserve it preserves the area for farming, doesn't take anything out. It does have no other issues that would create this for a flag lot, front to back, et cetera. Is this true? So staff is recommending approval of the flag lot. It is in the 1980 master plan. There's no site-specific recommendations, but it does conform to the Eros master plan. There is no farming being taken out of production for this preliminary plan. It is platting around the existing house that you saw on site. For forest conservation plan, the net tract area is just what's being platted. It is about 6.16 acres. With that, there is a little bit of forest clearing here for the right-of-way, and a little bit of forest clearing here, which is too small to be retained and not being placed into Cat 1 easement, so therefore it's counted as cleared. There is at 1.68 acres of retention, shown here in green, and they are providing 0.12 acres of forest here in this area, in the pipe stem and the stream valley buffer on site. So they will be meeting all of their forest conservation. As far as community correspondence, there was all noticing had been done. We did receive one phone call last Friday. We played some phone tag and finally caught up later this week with Mr. Perlow, who is a neighbor that's immediately adjacent to the southeast of the property. The access road that cuts across the property cuts across the corner of his property, which he has no issue with it going across his property. He doesn't really want anything. He just asked if we could ask about access for him in the future to his land. We looked at his land. His property does have frontage on Peachtree Road, so the subdivision would not create any kind of landlocked situation. But we did put him in touch with the applicant's team about contacting him about future access rights along the existing driveway. So hopefully they can work that out during the plating stage of this process by just writing them into the access easement that they'll be giving the lot there anyhow. But like I said, it seems to be more of a civil issue than a planning issue since we're not creating any landlocked situation of the land. It does conform with the Eros master plan. The subdivision regulations meets all requirements of the AR zone, has all the public facilities, forest conservation, and stormwater management. Staff is recommending approval of the administrative subdivision and of the preliminary final forest conservation plan. I am here for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Penn, for your presentation. Do any of the board members have any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I understand that this is allowed in that zone, and I particularly like that they're using a flag lot so as not to have an unnecessary ingress and egress entryway. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have some members of the applicant, I guess their civil engineering group online if you have any questions, but I have no questions. It appears to be straightforward, and so I'm in agreement with what the planning staff has presented. So if there are no questions or comments, do I have a motion? We'll do two votes here, one for the administrative subdivision and one for the forest conservation plan. So I'd have a motion to approve the administrative subdivision number 620240080, where staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Yeah. I'll move to approve the administrative subdivision plan with conditions.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. And next, do I have a motion to approve the Forest Conservation Plan number F2024-0270, where staff is recommending approval with conditions?
Yeah. Yeah, move to approve the preliminary and final forest conservation plans with conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 3-0. And before we end, I'd like to just mention again that at 5:30 at our Wheaton headquarters, we have our final planning board speaker series on attainable housing. Others also call it missing middle housing. Tonight's panel will be on practicing, making it happen, implementation successes, and areas of focus. And you'll hear from developers and industry experts that have leveraged relaxed zoning and other creative tools to develop attainable/missing middle housing. So we look forward to seeing you at 5:30 today in person, or you can go on our website and click and to go look at it online through a Zoom Teams type of application. So thank you so much, and this ends our planning board meeting for today. Thank you.